Hello everyone and welcome to TBR's webinar, Internet of Things, Opportunity and Confusion with Ezra Gottheil. I'm Justin Surgeon and I'm hosting today's session. TBR believes the Internet of Things will add more than $1.5 billion to the IT industry revenues by 2018, with most of that revenue stemming from enterprise adoption. Although consumer IoT solutions such as wearables and home automation have gained attention for the concept, TBR believes the primary IoT opportunity is with businesses seeking to reduce costs and increase productivity in their core organizational processes. Industrial IoT solutions, specific to each customer and/or use case, present customers opportunities to transform businesses by gaining better visibility into and improved decision-making around supply chain, operations, and customer behavior. IT vendors will be presented with the opportunities and challenges of evolving, marketing, and selling their IT solutions into IoT markets. Today's webinar will cover this technology and emerging opportunities in the field. Before we begin the presentation, there are a few housekeeping items I'd like to cover. First, we'll be recording today's session and posting it on our YouTube channel, TBRI channel. We encourage you to visit our channel and watch this presentation or any of the previous presentations we've posted. Second, we'd like to hear your thoughts and opinions on the material we're presenting today. Please send any questions you have to the Q&A function. We will address them at the end of the presentation. Finally, we'll send out the slides and link to today's recording within 24 hours of the end of the webinar. You can also find the slides, as well as our thought leadership pieces, other webinars, and analyst commentaries on SlideShare at slideshare.net/TBR_market_insight. Now let me introduce the analyst presenting today. Ezra Gottheil is Principal Analyst in TBR's computing practice, leading team coverage on HP hardware, Dell hardware, Lenovo, and Apple. He is also a principal researcher on projects including IoT, consumer and business tablets, device monetization, PC warranties, PC supply chains, mobile device strategies, app stores, and social networking. And with that, let me hand this over to Ezra.
Thank you, Justin, and thank you everyone for coming. Good morning, good afternoon. There's my picture. We'll move right on from there. With the Internet of Things, we have a problem. These are builds. I need to be able to, is this going to work if I hit this? Okay, never mind, we're set. Sorry about that. With the Internet of Things, we see the rare occasion when a gigantic, hyped up new wave in IT, in which case the hype is justified. Last year, we said that the Internet of Things is like climate change, and we're not changing our story. It is like climate change in that it's been going on for a long time, in that the rate of change is accelerating, and in that it's going to affect everybody and everything. The thing that we underestimated last year is the rapidity of this change. So now we are saying that we believe that where the action is in commercial IoT, sometimes called industrial IoT or industrial internet, that the consumer part of it is significant and it gets the headlines, but if you look at our projection, we believe that where the IT revenue will come in the industrial, in the Internet of Things is from the industrial Internet of Things, the commercial Internet of Things. And yes, we are predicting more than a $1.5 trillion net new revenue, not replacement revenue, but net new revenue into the IT industry by 2018. The reason things are happening very fast, there's a bunch of changes that make Internet of Things solutions possible. IPv6, lower cost technology, improved small scale networks, and so on. But the big thing is that the Internet of Things is a potentially transformative technology for businesses, and businesses that see the opportunity to change or see the threat that their competitors are going to change are moving very rapidly to implement Internet of Things solutions. These are not going to be static. They will continue to evolve. They have stages of development. This is going to be going on for quite a while. Let's look at some examples. So GE decided several years ago that it liked the margins in the information technology business as compared to the margins in the making big things business. That's not unusual or surprising. And GE had been building into its things, its power plants, its jet engines, its CAT scanners and other things, had been building in a lot of sensors that fed into the operating panel, sensors that might have fed into an a room in the reactor, sensors that would occasionally feed out to a remote location. But what it did is it looked at the data that was being generated, looked at further opportunities to generate data, and said, what would happen if we consolidated these data? Could we get more use out of it? And the answer was yes, they could. They could actually improve the products. Not only would the engine warn the pilot or the mechanic of potential problems, but the problems could be referred back to an external source, and they could do predictive maintenance on the engines. They could optimize the operations. They could take data from multiple ones of these engines or CAT scanners or nuclear reactors and learn more about the general operations of these things. The product could improve, and that could lead either to more customer satisfaction and therefore better sales, greater loyalty, or to lower costs for GE, or most likely some combination of the two, all improving the business. But there was more than that. They could expand the business into new services. So what they did with the engine sensors and other aircraft sensors is they went into a joint venture with Accenture to create a company called Polaris. And what does Polaris do? Polaris takes the information that the sensors are generating that basically says this plane isn't going to fly when scheduled, and uses it to leverage that information to help the airlines cope with the fact that the airplane isn't going to fly. So Polaris services help with scheduling of alternative flights, of channeling passengers, of taking care of crew, of dealing with gate reservations, all the stuff that's day-to-day operations for airlines that they all have to do is now being shifted to this joint venture on the basis of the fact that the joint venture has the leading information, the leading indicator of the need for changes in the flight. This is a whole new business for GE and Accenture, and it expands it. What's more, GE finally got its dream. It got to be an IT vendor and enjoy software margins. It is actually selling its device management platform, Predix, I'm not sure about the pronunciation, as a software product for industrial internet applications. So what we see here is the potential for IoT to do two things. Take the core business of the company, and make it work better, improve sales, improve revenues, improve customer satisfaction, improve margins, and also gives GE the opportunity to expand into adjacent businesses, and sometimes to leapfrog and expand into whole new industries. John Deere is a similar story. John Deere has put sensors in its tractors and combines and other machinery for years. They feed back and warn you when there's going to be a problem. It started to consolidate the data, making it easier to predict when your machinery would need maintenance, making it easier for you to manage your fleet of machinery and minimizing downturn, improving the product, improving the experience, lowering costs for both the John Deere and the end customer. But there's more to it than that. John Deere took this information and used it and drove it back into applications that farmers can use for entire farm management. They improve the product, they expand to new services. So the app now helps you with farm management. You know where you're going to use the combine and when and that it's going to be available and all that. And then they expand to a related business in the same market but not based on their equipment. So they take let me add one more aspect of adding the services, because I think this is really kind of cool. The combines, the chutes that feed the grain that's being harvested, the crops that are being harvested through the combine into the trucks, now have sensors in them that can report on a real-time basis the weight and quality and attributes of the actual foodstuffs. This leads to much more powerful management of the farm and of the crop, and creates data that can be reused by the farmer for a variety of things. What else did they do? They said, we're in the business of helping farmers use technology to manage their farms. What if we were to put moisture sensors into the soil to help them maximize it and leverage the expensive water they're using to grow their crops? So John Deere leapfrogs out of its main business of providing big, heavy machinery and developing their full potential into a new category, sensors in the fields that actually become part of the productive capacity of the farm itself. Third example, Disney. So Disney had some problems. It had problems with people making reservations. They get a small number of advanced reservations when they sign up ahead of time, but there's a lot of competition for them, so there's even lines to get reservations, so you don't have to stand on lines to get on the rides. So what Disney did is it looked into the possibility of using a small device, a magic band, tying that into a mobile app, My Magic, and it's also got a website, My Magic, and tying it into their pass system, and allowing customers to have a better experience, less time waiting, easier checking in, and some other side effects, so that this bracelet has an RFID on it. The RFID reports a person's location, and when a child wearing one of these bracelets walks up to one of those scary costume characters, the scary costume character will address the child by name, because the scary costume character knows the name of the child who's now approaching the child. I think it makes it more scary, but it seems to be a positive experience for the kids at the park. So the product is improved. It also solves problems for Disney, because Disney knows where its customers are, so Disney can allocate resources to putting their people where the customers are. Half of Disney's costs in running this operation is personnel, so they can lower their costs by reducing the personnel needs to cover a given number of customers. They can do load leveling. They can help encourage people to be in the parts of the park that are less populated at given time. What more can be done? So far, Magic Band and My Magic are confined to the run-up to the park experience and shortly after the park experience. TBR believes that the next step will be to extend that to create an ongoing relationship between the families that visited the park and Disney, and to use the customizable, attractive, comes in 7 colors Magic Band as a kind of totem that allows the kids to interact with the website, to interact with the app, and to interact with other Disney products going forward. For instance, at this point, when you take pictures in the park, they are uploaded onto your own personal My Magic site on the website, but if you don't download them in 45 days, they disappear. Disney will soon realize that leaving them up there basically forever will encourage the kids to start begging the parents, when can we go back and take more pictures? And I think that's the likely next thing to happen. So again, what we see here is leveraging the RFID technology, the mobile app technology, the integration of the entire system, the data about the locations of the children, and leveraging that to deliver a better product, increase revenue. The spend is greater at the park because it's easier to do things, because there's less time spent on lines, and to reduce the cost of delivering the product, which in the business case is the experience. So what can we learn from these examples? Well, the thing about IoT is it's very much part of IT. When we look at an IoT solution, it's all about data. Data is something that IT has been playing with since day one. It's all about acquisition of it, consolidation of it, transmission of it, storage, analysis, and then outputting the analysis, and then acting on the analysis. So IT solutions are made of many parts, but most of those parts are pretty familiar. So when you look at an IoT solution, what you see is parts that are familiar, things like the big networks that carry the data to on-premise or cloud storage, the storage itself, the processing that's done there, the analytics that are applied, and the apps that are used to control the information from the devices. But there are also some new parts, things that are coming along now as part of the Internet of Things. The things themselves, the small networks that they run on, which are different from the networks that carry the data basically from the router into the Internet. The things management systems, these many devices have to be managed, they have to be secured, they have to be provisioned, and the thing security. Wrapping this all up, and maybe the biggest opportunity of all, is services. To do these things, to build these things, you need to engage people who can understand the potential of the technology and understand the business that the customer is in, and come up with these solutions that can be incremental improvements and transformative, design them, implement them, and then you need people to manage them on a day-to-day basis. So services is a big part of the story. What we believe then is this works out to be net new revenue for IT. We saw the cloud revolution, but that was basically moving something that had been happening on-premise into centralized locations. So while there was a lot of movement and activity, it was mostly a replacement. This isn't. This is new stuff. And why is it new stuff? It's new stuff because it's adding value to the customer. This is net new revenue, net new profit, net new markets, and some of that revenue some of the profit that you gain from implementing the IoT system goes to the vendors of the IoT system. And so you can streamline and grow existing businesses, and you can expand the business to adjacent markets or even leapfrog into distant markets, because you can leverage the data that are being generated by these devices. And you can even continue your current business using new and different business models. The added business value drives incremental spend. So when you're going to get more out of it, you're willing to put more into it. And because it adds value, it drives more revenue, drives more profit. Customers will spend more money, and they will be spending money in IT, some of it for IT products and services which generally exist at this point. They will have to be adapted and modified, and the sellers and creators of this will have to be responsive to the needs of the customer and the needs of the IoT systems. But databases, analytics, network storage, processing, it's pretty familiar stuff. We're not the only ones who are excited about what IoT can do. Michael Porter and James Heppelman is CEO of PTC, call IoT the third wave of IT-driven competition. And it's the competition that's driving the rapidity of the adoption of this new approach to business. What do you need to do IoT? Well, you really need to look at the core business. You may redesign it, or you may simply enhance it, but it's not a common horizontal process like CRM or even supply chain management or personnel. This is something that varies from business to business, because these sensors and these devices are at the very edge of the business. So the solutions are not just customized. They're not adaptations of a core application. They are built to order. They are bespoke, as they say. And they affect where the business touches the world, so that they're very much a matter, the implementers, designers of these systems have to be complete understanding of what the business is and how it touches the world. We believe we can think of it as the business nervous system. And what that does is that it means that the management of the business actually is much closer to the world. It has the ability to respond more quickly. It can be more adaptive. It can change things and try things. There's a lot more flexibility in a business that's fully instrumented through devices at the periphery of the business. Building one of these, helping a business choose what to build and how to build, inventing a new one of these things requires both technical knowledge and knowledge of the business itself. So IoT ends up being a team effort. That is to say, since it has many of the parts we're used to in very large solutions, database, analytics, network, security, and so on, typically there are many more actors than there are in a more simple implementation. Quite often there are multiple vendors. The lead vendor is the team captain. This is the vendor that is in most direct engagement with not just the company, but the strategic management of the company. Everybody dealing with an IoT solution will be dealing with the customer's IT department, but the lead vendor will be dealing also with the strategic management of the company, because this is a company transformative kind of solution. And that's the vendor that works most closely with the customer. It's also the vendor who has the power to help select the other vendors in the solution, and will get the lion's share, I'm afraid, of the margin. That's a difficult role to take, because it requires a span of knowledge that goes from the technology all the way to the core of the business. So you require a deep knowledge of the customer business, and an ongoing, not just the knowledge of the customer business, but an ongoing relationship with business management, and for these big ones, with top business management. You can be a strategic partner of a large company, but dealing almost entirely with the IT organization, and that doesn't necessarily put you in the position of being a likely general contractor or prime contractor for one of these projects. You'll be involved, but they're likely to look elsewhere at companies that have the skills to help them transform. And of course, this is typically kind of the business consulting, business strategy, management consulting companies, and the few IT companies that integrate those with the rest of their business. There are also companies like GE and Bosch that aren't necessarily traditional IT vendors or consulting companies. They know their verticals, they know their customers, businesses, and they've built up the capacity to deal with the information technology. They take that and their understanding of the customer's business and their access to the customer, and they make themselves the leader in these engagements. So what exactly is the thing to do if you're an IT vendor and you want to be part of this kind of solution? Well, in many cases, you're not necessarily going to play the role of the lead, and identifying that early on is an important part of the problem. So you need to figure out what's going on in the business world of your customers, where the IoT action is coming, because your customer, if your customer is in a vertical where someone else is moving quickly in IoT, they will be moving quickly. There's a real threat here in this transformative power, and that's the reason for this domino effect of a wave of IoT. So staying aware of IoT generally, staying aware of where the projects are, who's doing them, what they do, how they do them, is an important part of being prepared to compete in this world for part of that action. And then qualifying your customers. Are you close enough to to the business management to lead that team? Or do you want to make sure that you're there as a key contractor to deliver an important part of the solution? Yes, you may be dealing with someone else to help with the design, but we're an important part of your core business technology. And it means that you have to look for partners whose strengths lay closer to business management than you may typically do. You may be looking at partners who are primarily technology resellers. Now you need to be looking at partners that really can talk to top management and talk about transformative changes in their businesses through leveraging of newly available technology. Next, you have to make sure that what you provide, if it's security or an analytics or storage or network, whatever, is well differentiated from the other vendors, and that it's very integrable, because these are choreographed solutions. They involve many, many different vendors, and they have to all work together. And you have to grow your business understanding, your understanding of the customer business, because even if you are not the general contractor, the prime vendor, you are going to be dealing with business people and their business needs. These are transformative solutions, and they engage the business top to bottom. The more you understand about the business problems that your customers are facing, the more able you are to integrate with the other players and leverage your technical capacity for the greatest gain. So going forward, TBR is going to be doing a great amount of IoT research. And what we're looking at is looking at the actual business solutions and business transformations. We believe that's where the action is. This hasn't become a stable, there's no one IoT market at this point. And they may very well never be. But right now we have to look, excuse me, at what businesses are doing, what kinds of transformations they're doing, and how they're using technology, what technology they're using, and from vendors, from what vendors is this technology arrived at? The use of which vendors drive which kinds of solutions, solve which kinds of technology problems, and what is working and what is not. What solutions are working, what business transformations are working, and what vendors are working, and what vendors are adapting to the needs of what we believe is a very significant change in the IT environment. That concludes my presentation. Thank you very much, and now we're open for questions.
All right, excellent. So, yes, if everybody has any questions, can you please send them to us through the Q&A function. And with that, we'll get started. And the first question, in what verticals is IoT getting the most traction?
The most obvious ones are ones that actually have been using sensors for quite a while. So those are the extractive industries, oil and gas, mining, and there's also transportation and logistics are big ones. There's a lot of attention being paid in cities, in government functions, in public functions, and finally, there's a lot going on in healthcare.
All right. So where do you see the movement in government markets for IoT solutions and in healthcare?
Okay, so government markets are really mostly at the city level. There's obviously budgetary constraints, and at the same time, there's not the competitive drive for rapid adoption. But anything that can reduce costs or increase the efficiency of a city as a functioning organism has a real possibility. So we've seen things having to do with traffic and parking, with air quality, and with infrastructure. So we have a problem with deteriorating infrastructure, and we need to be able to put the repair people in the right places. If we can fit the infrastructure with sensors, maybe we don't have to do quite so many inspections. Public safety is another issue, and again, there's cost savings opportunities if we can save power costs with management of lighting and things like that. We'll look to that in public. In healthcare, what we're looking at is an awful lot of instrumentation at the patient level, and it's been going on for quite a while. And when my son was in the NICU, he had more IP addresses than most large corporations. So this involves the ability to integrate data both for better medical care and for management of healthcare systems. Then the tie-in to the payment systems is less clear, but it's mostly about care delivery. Wellness, I see the next question. Wellness and employee engagement. What are you seeing? Well, there have been a couple of, so here we see a kind of a place where consumer touches commercial. So there has been an insurance company that is rebating money to its customers if they wear a fitness tracker and it reports that they're engaging in more activity. I think we'll see more of that, but I think we'll see larger movement when larger insurance people are paying not so much attention to physical activity and wellness as things that have a more direct, measurable, and immediate impact on healthcare costs, which would be medication compliance. When you see a device that someone can wear that can monitor blood pressure on an ongoing basis as opposed to only when asked, then I think you will see an encouragement by healthcare providers to get to get patients to wear it. Blood glucose is another one. There is a blood glucose device that can be sort of semi-implanted and subcutaneously implanted for a couple of weeks at a time. That's still a bit intrusive, but improvement in the sensors would change that.
All right. Are there any industry standards that have come up specifically with regard to how the IoT platform would look like and what it will constitute?
So there's been a lot of talk about the communications protocols with the various devices, depending on the environment. There's Zigbee and low-energy Bluetooth, and there are several others. That seems to be the main area where there's a seeking for standards, because obviously a network needs, senders and receivers, and it would be good if all the hardware could standardize. That seems to be the most important. So what we're seeing now is companies jumping the gun and just taking what they've got. And yes, everything will get simpler, prices will go down, standards will be common in another year or so. But if you see an opportunity or experience a threat, you want to move quickly. There are issues around the software that acts as device management and device security, and software that handles data flow between the devices and the cloud or on-premise servers. And that's not so much a matter of standards as a matter of the emergence of dominant commercial platforms and vendors. That's also happening at this point. I see Microsoft working very hard to try to make Azure a key player in that. Microsoft has also announced that Windows 10 will be a device operating system, a thing operating system, as it were. But of course, Azure will work with any thing operating system and vice versa.
All right, next question. You seem to put a lot of emphasis on the need for multiple vendor partnerships in building IoT solutions. Can you give some specific examples of why you feel a vendor could not provide end-to-end IoT solutions on their own?
I don't have specific solutions. I don't have an example of where a vendor failed, but since these are basically systems that plug into many existing systems, I'm assuming there's a legacy system there. I'm also not aware of any company that can do everything from the business consulting to the individual app development to the network to the security. There is one company, IBM, that obviously claims to do that, and I believe you look under the covers, even IBM is doing subcontracting on a lot of those pieces. It's basically, my analysis saying that it's a multi-vendor play is coming from the fact that a solution involves so many different pieces of the IT puzzle. I'm reading. What is your take on IoT regulations and standards? The issue here, I think, is that there has to be a lot more transparency about the ownership of the data, whether that's by regulation or a standard that basically educates the customer that says, when your system is generating data, who owns the data, who has the right to resell the data, how can the data be used elsewhere? Do you want us to resell your data under the following rules? How do we take care of the licensing, et cetera? And yes, I see that somebody noticed that it was Oscar Insurance that is paying people for doing well with their fitness trackers. Mike Davis, many existing IoT apps are closed proprietary systems, physical layer, proprietary protocols, et cetera. What is the trend in commercial IoT towards open standards as TCP, HTTP, et cetera? The trend is definitely, as newer ones are implemented, to engage these open standards. The reason, largely, for these closed proprietary systems is they are old. They were started before there were obvious ways of using these things. I don't think you're going to see new implementations wanting to stick with closed proprietary systems for security reasons, but I think that paying close attention to security in the world of open standards will be very, very important. So I think you're basically looking at legacy systems. As I said, this has been going on for a long time. There's a joke about, I was amazed to learn that I've been speaking prose my entire life. This is a similar kind of thing. IoT has existed as long as it was cost justified to connect up sensors and concentrate your data. And in fact, the term Internet of Things has been around for more than 20 years, but it's only now that we're putting together the possibility of grabbing a lot of parts off the shelf using standard protocols and accelerating the adoption of this.
Right. Do you see aggregators and API providers such as Apple's HealthKit playing a big role in commercial IoT?
A big but not critical role. So where HealthKit plays, and Google has equivalent ones, is in the integration of data from multiple sources for the end user. So Apple, and for that matter Google, are very focused on the end user, and they provide a way of having the end user gain what leverage they can out of having data from multiple sources, their fitness tracker, their fitness device, et cetera, their heart rate monitor, and putting it together so they can see that data. So when you want to talk about healthcare, yes, the user will have an interface, and that will go through the app on their phone that they're familiar with, but the healthcare provider will have probably a completely separate interface.
What is the biggest threat to the IoT wave fizzling out?
I really can't conceive of a complete fizzle. We know that there's waves of overexcitement, the cold splash of reality, the stepping back 2 steps and going forward. But basically what you're looking at here is a lot of things that used to be very expensive have become very cheap. So we saw IoT exist in large expensive systems where they justified the cost for many, many years. HP has a project with one of the major oil companies, and I can't remember which one, to put sensors every 10 meters in a field to gather seismic data. It's not called IoT because it predates the adoption of that term. That was worth doing back then. Doing it now would be a good deal less expensive. The sensor will be less expensive. The radios will be less expensive. So I don't see a kind of a technology where costs are coming down and where it's been useful even at high cost fizzling. I see growth as there waves of growth. There's disappointment and there's regression, but there's growth. Security is going to be a big issue.
Which vendors are currently leading innovation around IoT?
I am not our security person. I can give you a couple. I can't say these are the leading ones. I can talk about a couple of companies that have been working quite hard on this. Samsung has said that security is going to be the key to their commercial IoT initiatives. I think that we can reasonably conclude from that kind of security will be implemented in part through microelectronics, Samsung being the kind of company it is. Intel and AT&T announced, without any specifics, a collaboration on security that will certainly include IoT as well as endpoints. Verizon has very strong security offerings that are critical to IoT adoption, but I can't talk about the horse race.
All right, I think we have one last question here. You've talked about large projects for large companies. What will be the effect of IoT on smaller businesses?
Well, I think what you see with IoT is what you see in the history of most other technologies. The early entrants are the ones with the large budgets who are building custom solutions to give them competitive advantage over their large competitors. What you eventually see happen is a collection of much more cost-effective, off-the-shelf solutions that benefit from economies of scale, and these will be available to smaller businesses that are viable as small businesses because they're competing in markets where being small is actually of value. So IoT will be available, and I will give you my free IoT genius idea of the day. It's the smart salad bar. So salad bars are constrained by the fact that you have to charge the same price for whatever ingredient you add, whether it be inexpensive or expensive by weight, which means you have to price them to your most expensive ingredient. If you had scales under the trays and scales under the container, you could be pricing each item in the salad bar individually, and you could even price them dynamically so that as the day wore on, the prices would decline. That's a freebie. Anybody who would like to can go ahead and implement that one.
All right. Well, thank you, Ezra, and thank you, everyone, for your questions. You can follow Ezra as well as TBR on the Twitter handles listed here, and please check out our pages on SlideShare and YouTube as well. Additionally, before you sign off, I'd like to ask you to take a survey about today's webinar. Your feedback would be greatly appreciated. We'll leave the chat function open for another few minutes for people to ask last-minute questions, and otherwise, have a great afternoon. Thank you.